On the one side, an old-school SJW grifter and keyboard warrior of the nastiest sort, 2014 Tumblr vintage. On the other side, a hate grifter who manipulates, misleads, and panders to the prejudices of an insecure and alienated audience by churning up animosity. So, you might ask, why get between them, Grim? Well, let's find out. Together.
We come for you, Grim, and pull the trigger.
Hello, lovelies. Today we're talking about mum chums, which is, brace yourselves for the levels of creepiness and grooming we're not about to hit, a conversational role-playing game about mums and carers shepherding 4 and 5-year-olds through the exhausting purgatory of early childhood. 4 to 5, by the way, is the age at which young children transition, no, not in that sense, from preschool to primary school. So 4 to 5 is not in any way a sort of weirdly specific age. It is rather a time of change for kids and parents alike here in the UK. But yes, really, the entire premise of this game and the bun fight around it is basically, what if your TTRPG session was a coffee morning where everyone's knackered, which sounds horrendously controversial, I know. Now, normally something like this would blow straight past me. It's a quiet, domestic, slice-of-life game of the kind that gives me a sense of tedium that settles into my balls as a dull ache. Not my field of expertise or interest, unless the historian and archivist side in me wakes up and decides to start preserving RPG micro-subgenres that barely exist. But here we are, because 2 people, both of whom I find intensely aggravating, have somehow managed to turn a whole 17-page booklet into a full-blown culture war witch hunt. So, thanks OGGM for dragging me into this mess by drawing my attention to Diversity in Dragons being a shithead. Again, truly, my cup runneth over. Let's start with the designer of Mum Chums, Tanya Floaker. According to her own itch.io page, I am transgender and a mum. I am the primary caregiver for my child. And in an interview with Plain Sailing Games, she says, I'm a 43-year-old queer mum. By night, I design roleplay games. So the basic facts are this. Tanya is queer, trans, a parent, and makes small indie narrative games. So it is in one way entirely understandable why they might make a game about those things. Now, my opinion, which is mine alone, nobody else can have it, it's purely mine. I have had extremely unpleasant interactions with Tanya in the past. I find her to be sanctimonious, hostile, authoritarian, in a sort of anything else other than my way is bad sort of way, and endlessly irritated by anyone who doesn't sing and dance directly from her exact hymn sheet. She describes herself as an anarchist, but the authoritarian tendencies cannot help but come out constantly, particularly censorious instincts. She often calls for boycotts or bans of material that she personally dislikes and badmouths other people and other games constantly in a hypocritical froth. She also produces a lot of work that, to my mind, feels more like what I have taken to calling papal indulgences. Products where the main function isn't the product itself or play, but rather signalling virtue, moral purity, and political alignment by backing a particular designer who fits a particular set of identitarian characteristics or is marginalized or sidelined in some way. But none of that, however, much as I may grind my teeth at it, has anything to do with any claims of wrongdoing, necessarily. She's annoying and unremittingly ideological, not dangerous or creepy in any way that I've been able to discern. Now, for the other half of this Punch and Judy show, we have Diversity in Dragons, also known on Twitter as Wee Wheaton, which, according to him, is enough to start saying that he has a pee fetish involving Will Wheaton, but by the by. His YouTube channel is public. It is Diversity in Dragons. The content is pretty much what you would expect. Culture war punditry framed as RPG commentary. Videos roasting wokeness. And again, anyone who steps even slightly outside of his political alignment. Reactionary politics packaged as moral crusading about the state of gaming and even broader nerd media from time to time. Again, this is factual, this is what they post publicly. It's descriptive. In my opinion, he's absolutely a political shock jockey, an anger baiter, a clickbaiter. He stirs controversy for clicks and engagement. He thrives on the churn of outrage, which I guess I'm feeding a little bit by making this, but hey-ho. He uses the same rhetorical tricks you see across the whole right-wing content ecosystem, just tailored to RPGs. The tone is authoritarian in its own mirror image way, excusing the worst excesses of the Trump and Reich, a kind of my team should control the culture, your team is destroying it argument, which is pretty much exactly the same as the other side of things. He's in a constant state of performative, hyperbolic, aggrieved fury that can't be good for your blood pressure. If I find Tanya grindingly censorious in one direction, I find Double D equally censorious in the other. Two poles of the same magnet. The criticism of Mum Chums that Diversity in Dragons engages in his video falls into three broad categories. First, personal attacks. The video opens with rhetoric aimed squarely at the designer rather than the work. He dead names and misgenders Floaker, which is not only impolite, but unnecessary in this instance and irrelevant, and done for no other reason than to be a performative dick. Which is ironic, because I'm fairly certain his dick doesn't perform in any other circumstance. Calling her mentally ill, specifically because she's trans, that seems to be his main criticism. Now, I suppose being trans does technically mean that you're mentally ill, but he means it in the same way that people dismiss, say, depression as being a little bit sad, rather than a physiological and neurological issue. So what he really means is mental illness isn't real, so you're just pretending to feel like a woman for nefarious purposes. When you take this to its logical conclusion, it is obviously whack. He frames her politics as inherently unhinged, which may or may not be true. I'm not intimately aware of every in and out of her politics, but methinks he doth protest too much, especially given his own past comments. His own politics are deeply questionable. Anyone still lashed to the mast of MAGA is too far gone at this point, and engaged in apologia for actual kiddie diddlers, not imaginary ones. He ridicules EN World staff for interviewing her, though they have a very long record of talking to people about indie games. Not me yet, of course, but otherwise this is a very good thing that they do. He dots his so-called critique with culture war tropes like white apology, raincoats at the playground, socialist mantra, mentally ill by default, blah blah blah. This isn't a critique of a game. This is someone picking a target and hammering on identity as a rhetorical weapon. I believe he's done other videos about Floaker as well. It's ad hominem, it is fallacious, and it is pointless, and it tells you nothing whatsoever about the game. Rather, he is trying to reframe the author in a way that he knows will set off his audience and cause them to create spurious associations later on. Secondly, creepy and grooming claims. Grooming, the magic word. Everything I don't like is paedophilia. Again, methinks he doth protest too much. If you look at this and you see paedophiles, and says more about you than anybody else, I think. And this is where the video leans fully into innuendo. He argues that the game is creepy because it focuses on carers of 4 and 5-year-olds, citing it as oddly specific. But this is literally the age at which Scottish children and British children in general start primary school. And this is supposed to be like the inciting incident for the nature of the whole game, such as it is. This is even stated on the game's page, so all you had to do was read. Play begins as the kids are about to start school for the first time. I didn't even have access to the full PDF, and I can work this shit out. It is not rocket surgery. He also quotes a vignette suggestion. Cuddles, tickles and play wrestling on the big bed, and leaps directly to accusations that this is somehow suspicious, as if parents have never played physical, innocent games with small children or wrestled with them. He also frames normal parental frustrations, sleep disruption, school choice, kids gossiping amongst themselves, as if they're somehow sinister. And then the homeschooling complication, the bad faith journalist reporting thing that's given as a possible thing that can happen in the game, gets interpreted as some sort of covert confession or political manifesto. This despite seemingly being a fan of homeschooling himself, for similar, if different, cultish reasons. On the one hand, you've got people who think that the British mainstream education system instills bias and bigotry, and on the other hand, we have Christian nationalist homeschooling, sinister MAGA cult vibes. I'm sure he'd argue that exposés of the problems with homeschooling, when made of Crimsbian nationalists, are unfair, but apparently it's perfectly fair when those same tactics are used against trans or extreme left homeschoolers. For the record, I don't think homeschooling should be allowed. I think it's almost always abusive in one degree or another, even if nobody involved thinks it's abusive. All of these insinuations rely on the viewer buying into the trans panic narrative, trans derangement syndrome, you might say. None of these are supported by any content in the game or in any public record. Thirdly, product dismissal. This part is ironically closest to actual criticism, but forms the thinnest gruel in this video. But it's still drenched in ideology. He complains that the game is too short at 17 pages. I mean, if it says what it needs to say in 17 pages, fair enough is fair enough. He says it's overpriced at $13. This is a fair criticism. That is a ludicrous price. Though I've seen justifications, though I don't agree with them, justifications that I don't find convincing, that minorities should charge more at obscene and stupid levels as some sort of compensation or something. So, coming soon from me then. I'll put out a micro RPG that fits on an index card and costs $100 because I'm disabled and mentally ill. And I like a bit of slack with my tickle, all of which are minority statuses. This is a matter of taste and interpretation, I suppose. Some people are clearly happy to pay $13 for 17 pages, but I do not count myself amongst them. He says it's badly laid out. Again, this is a matter of taste, but I would agree from what I've seen. He calls it corpo slop. Now, I'm not sure how this can be applied to an indie RPG, because it's just by the very nature of what the thing is, it's not corporate, so I'm not really sure where he's coming from there. He says it's not escapist, and I think for some people who don't have children or can't have children or who are the wrong sex to bear children, then role-playing having a family is escapism of a sort. I don't have kids. I would have liked to have had some. If I do have any out there, they're the result of some sperm donations I did in my youth. But I have no idea yet. None of them have reached out to contact me. I would find it painful to play such a game. Others may find it comforting. So it could be escapism. For most RPGs, we harken back to the playground where we played War or Star Wars or whatever TV series we particularly liked, but there was a whole other half of the schoolyard that was playing house, and so maybe this appeals to that sort of nostalgia. He also says it's undeserving of EN World attention, which could be said of any and all India TTRPGs that they cover, so what he means is, I don't like this. But really, all of these are subjective takes. Even the cost, because clearly some people are willing to pay that. But they're at least about the game itself, until it spirals into claims of grooming, I suppose. Let's put the emotion aside and just look at the facts that are available to everyone here. Mum Chums is described by the designer as a slice-of-life RPG about the people who care for kids. Play begins as the kids are about to start school for the first time. The page makes it clear that it is rooted in white Scottish mainstream parenting perspectives. That's acknowledged openly, unnecessarily, ideologically, I think, sure, but that's okay. It's about emotional honesty and mundane stress. It has no winners or losers. It encourages adapting anything that makes players uncomfortable away from the game. The designer said all of this in public comments. As written, Mum Chums is a slice-of-life kitchen sink drama about mainstream parenting spaces. End quote. There is no sexual content. There are no explicit themes. There is no illicit subject matter. Just scenes of parenting. People outside the outrage cycle who've looked in at the text describe it as niche, domestic, emotional narrative play, not for everyone, not sinister. End quote. So what's going on? Well, the US right is in the grip of a moral panic about groomers, a pedo panic. This is not new. It echoes the exact same nonsense thrown at gay men, lesbians, migrants, and anyone seen as socially other in any way, shape or form. Having been through the satanic panic where we were collectively the victims of such a thing, you would think people like Double D would know better, especially given the recent moral panics from the other side of the authoritarian shithill spectrum, claiming everything is racist and sexist. So claiming everything is grooming is not really any different. I blame his swollen amygdala and hyperactive insula. But the numbers, they're absolutely not on their side. There is no evidence that trans people are more likely to be child abusers. Not one serious data set points to it. This is, in and of itself, kind of remarkable, as gender non-conforming LGBT kids are more likely to be the victims of bullying, CSA, and so on. And usually this shit is cyclic. Hurt people hurt people. You've all heard that phrase, right? It's kind of true. But this doesn't hold true here. What the data does show is that the vast majority of child sexual abuse is committed by gender-conforming males, usually ones known to the child. Trans people are more likely to be victims of violence and harassment than prosecutors of it. Claims of trans predators emerge from isolated anecdotes, no population is free of sin, cherry-picked cases, and online conspiracy echo chambers. So, repeat after me, anecdote is not data. Weaponizing this panic against the designer because she made a tiny, mundane RPG is cowardly, dishonest, and dangerous. So, you might ask, why am I wading through this cesspit between two ideologues tearing strips off each other over a niche, overpriced booklet that I couldn't give a tuppenny wank over? Because I actually do give a shit about free expression. Tanya wants certain books and creators boycotted, and for that, they can get in the fucking bin. Double D wants others shamed, blacklisted, or run out of the industry. For that, they can get in the fucking bin. Left woke, right woke scold, church lady, same shit. Both of them want other people's creative freedoms constrained by their own personal worldview and taste. Both want to catastrophize things that they don't like and to pretend that they're huge cultural problems. They're not. Horror comics did not fuel juvenile delinquency. D&D didn't turn people into Satanists. Heavy metal didn't drive people to suicide. Except glam metal, because it was shit. Lara Croft isn't misogynistic, and a cozy game about playing a parent isn't grooming or fetishistic. You fucking retard. And if we let either side define the terms of discourse through moral panic, we lose the core principle of creativity. You make the thing, people choose whether to buy it, and we unbind that creativity in so much as is humanly possible. That's it. C'est tout. Ja esta. Basta. Fertig. Soredake desu. Tas davashkna. End of fucking story. So, here's my conclusion. Floaker is, in my view, an ideological scold and an arsehole. Wee Wheaton, Double D, is, in my view, an outrage bait machine, cynically exploiting people for clicks. Mum Chums is a small, cosy parenting simulator that I'd never buy, written by a shithead whose trans identity is entirely incidental to the whole thing, and entirely incidental to them being a profligate waste of carbon atoms. And I'm not spending $13 on maybe 1,000 words of content that no one has even thought worth pirating. But none of that justifies culture war mobs or baseless insinuations. Both sides need to knock it off, retreat to their own corners, make their own stuff, support the things that they enjoy, and stop trying to whip up mobs to destroy each other. A pox on both your houses. Now, let's get back to making games that people actually might want to play. Zang. Much digital ink and blood has been spilt talking about diversity representation in tabletop gaming, and in every other field of geek and nerd endeavour. Usually these conversations are extremely combative, and they tend to end poorly for everyone involved. I've been involved in these debates and discussions myself, to my detriment, the position I hold being that free expression and the vision of the author or creator should trump any and all other concerns, including diversity, representation, and so on. To my mind, the answer is for people to create according to their own conscience, not to be condemned out of hand, or for their motivations to be presumed, and for diversity of ideas to be the benchmark. I want a world in which Varg Vikernes and Olivia Hill can both make and sell the games that they want, and where I can ignore both of them. That said, I cannot help but be drawn to controversial topics. That is where the interesting conflicts and stories lie, and there are few topics so controversial as the treatment of minorities within media. Here we arrive at a nexus point, a conflict point, between realism, expectation, demands for representation, demands for free expression, historical revisionism, magic, science fiction, truth, is, and ought. That makes it interesting. But the battle lines of identitarian politics, liberalism, conservatism, the regressive left and cultural libertarianism also make it an area fraught with difficulty and willful misunderstandings. There are no good, or at least no satisfactory, answers to a lot of these questions. Perhaps there are just multiple approaches, each of which will annoy some group or other. What's true in all circumstances, however, is that these controversial topics are interesting, fascinating, and important in terms of world, character, and scenario building, whatever your particular stance may be. This booklet intends to examine these issues in and of themselves, outside of the current state of controversy, and to ask, rather, how we might better simulate the plight of minority groups, understand them within the context of fictional worlds, make allowances for player characters who might seek to buck those societal trends, or to allow characters, through their actions, to affect social change within the game worlds. Available at post-mort.com and drive-thru-RPG.
It's time for you boys to share my last taste of the true black meat. Flesh of the giant aquatic Brazilian centipede.